During the 19th and early 20th centuries, a wave of anti-Jewish sentiment spread throughout the Russian Empire and several European countries. This led to the emergence of various ideas and plans in Europe aimed at removing Jews from their countries and resettling them elsewhere. Prior to the establishment of Israel in the Middle East, several proposals were put forward for potential Jewish settlements. Suggestions included settling Jews in New York State, USA, on the island of Tasmania in southern Australia, in the British colony of Guyana on the northern coast of South America, in the southeastern region of the Soviet Union near the Chinese border, in Kenya, East Africa, and even in the colonies of the Japanese Empire before and during World War II. However, one of the most notable and extensively studied attempts to resettle European Jews elsewhere was historically known as the Madagascar Plan. The origins of the Madagascar Plan trace back to early 20th century British anti-Jewish thinkers who proposed settling European Jews on the island of Madagascar, located near the southeastern coast of Africa. In 1937, the Polish government, in collaboration with the French government, which controlled Madagascar at the time, dispatched a committee to assess the island's readiness and suitability to receive the first group of Jewish settlers. After the Polish committee examined Madagascar, its leader concluded that the island could accommodate between 5,000 and 7,000 Jewish families. Maps were drawn up indicating the most suitable areas for Jewish settlement. However, other members of the committee disagreed, stating that due to the tropical climate unsuitable for the European Jewish population and the lack of infrastructure and services on the island, only 500 families or less could be accommodated. The committee failed to reach a definitive decision, and thus the Madagascar Plan was temporarily abandoned. With the rise of the German Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler assuming power in 1933, the Madagascar Plan resurfaced. As Nazi Germany achieved victories across Europe and expanded its empire, the decision was made to remove all Jews from the continent to a distant location. The objective was to select a place far from urbanization and lacking in natural resources, preventing the establishment of a powerful, prosperous state by Jewish settlers. Following the German occupation of France in May 1940, Franz Rademacher, the head of the Jewish Affairs Department in the German Foreign Ministry, proposed a plan to Hitler. The plan aimed to transfer all European Jews to the island of Madagascar, which was under French control at the time. The implementation of the plan was contingent upon France ceding Madagascar to Nazi Germany as part of the surrender conditions. According to the plan, 4 million Jews would be deported to Madagascar over a span of 4 years, at a rate of 1 million per year. The envisioned Jewish state in Madagascar would operate as a police state under the authority of the Nazi Third Reich, with SS forces deployed to monitor the Jewish community and oversee every aspect of their lives. Franz Rademacher also intended to confiscate the property of all European Jews to finance their transfer to Madagascar. An intermediary European bank would be established to handle financial dealings between the Jewish state in Madagascar and the rest of the world, as the Jewish entity in Madagascar would be prohibited from establishing banks or engaging directly in any matters related to money and economy. The primary objective of resettling Jews in Madagascar was to reduce their numbers during the transportation process from Europe. This was due to the Allied countries' control of the Suez Canal in Egypt, which would have prevented Germany and its allies from using the shortcut of direct sea routes via the canal. Instead, they would have had to circumnavigate the continent of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope, a significantly longer route of approximately 8,484 kilometers. This journey would have taken around 24 days by ship, and given the large number of Jews on board, along with the scarcity of food and medical supplies, a significant number of Jews would have likely perished before reaching Madagascar. Consequently, this would have reduced the number of Jewish settlers who could have arrived alive on the island, facilitating easier monitoring and control of the Jewish colony while minimizing the cost of managing it. However, the Madagascar Plan ultimately failed to materialize due to unforeseen changes in the course of World War II and the shift in power in favor of the Allies. For instance, the plan relied on transporting 1 million Jews annually from Europe to Madagascar via ships across the sea. At the time, the British Navy maintained control over the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean with a formidable fleet. Nazi Germany would have had to engage in fierce naval battles against the British fleet to open a pathway for implementing the plan. The Madagascar Plan also hinged on the success of Hitler's plan to invade England and force it to sign a surrender treaty, thereby gaining control of its extensive fleet. This fleet would have been utilized to transport Jews and settle them on Madagascar. However, with the failure of the German Air Force to neutralize the British Air Force and the strength of the British naval fleet, Hitler ultimately abandoned the plan to invade Britain. Finally, with the German invasion of the Soviet Union and Madagascar falling to the Allies in 1942, Hitler ordered the cancellation of the Madagascar Plan and the formulation of an alternative plan to eliminate the Jews instead of resettling them elsewhere. As a result, the Nazis turned to the establishment of concentration camps as a means to eradicate Jews and other targeted groups, including Roma, Soviets, Serbs, Poles, and individuals with special needs. Let us consider a scenario in which the Nazis successfully defeated Britain and gained control of its extensive fleet. In this hypothetical situation, they used the fleet to transport 4 million Jews to the island of Madagascar, establishing a Jewish entity there. How would this impact the Middle East, the world, and Madagascar itself? Regarding the Middle East, without the establishment of Israel, the region would have remained in its pre-Israel state. This means that the partition decision separating the Emirate of Transjordan east of the Jordan River from Palestine west of the Jordan River might have been nullified. Consequently, Jordan and Palestine could potentially reunite as a single entity, with Jerusalem as its capital. The conflicts of 1948, 1956, 1967, and the Yom Kippur War in 1973 would not have taken place. Additionally, the armed groups present in the Middle East today would not have emerged. Under this scenario, Jerusalem would have remained under Arab sovereignty, likely with a government structure subordinate to the German Third Reich. As for the island of Madagascar, where the alternative Jewish entity arose, the situation would certainly have been different. The native African population in Madagascar would not have welcomed the Jewish settlers from Europe, perceiving them as white European colonists, regardless of their religion. Thus, instead of the primarily ideological and religious conflict seen with Israel in the Middle East, the conflict on the island would have been ethnic. Considering that the Nazi Germany planned to subject the Jewish entity in Madagascar to the control of the SS forces, it is probable that the island would have been divided between the Jewish population and the indigenous African population. The Nazi authorities would likely have favored the indigenous population, as their true objective was not to establish a developed and strong Jewish state, but rather to eliminate Jews or reduce their numbers as much as possible, potentially even eradicating them entirely in Madagascar. Now, let us imagine that after World War II, the Germans granted the Jewish entity in Madagascar independence or conditional self-rule, allowing it to achieve development, prosperity, and stability. In such a scenario, the entity would serve as an attraction for Jews worldwide, ensuring they would not return to Europe in the future. How would this affect subsequent events? Given that Madagascar is an island surrounded by water on all sides, there would be no border disputes between the Jewish entity in Madagascar and its neighbors. With an area approximately 27 times larger than Israel, dividing the island between the Jewish and indigenous populations could be relatively straightforward without significant conflicts. Initially, the number of European Jewish settlers from Western Europe would be smaller than the number of original island inhabitants. However, as stability increased and Jewish immigration from all over Europe to Madagascar surged, the island would eventually have a Jewish majority. Europe's Jewish population at the time was approximately 9,500,000 people, while the indigenous population of Madagascar was around 4 million people. The Jewish settlers, utilizing the skills and knowledge acquired in Europe, would have developed the Jewish entity in Madagascar in areas such as agriculture, industry, education, and the economy. Consequently, this entity could have become one of Africa's most significant power centers. Without external threats or border disputes, the entity would likely be less prone to militarization and would not pursue nuclear weapons. Its primary focus would be peaceful policies and dealing with neighbors and the international community. However, the emergence of the Jewish entity in Madagascar instead of the Middle East would not have resulted in the disappearance of Jews from the Middle East region. Even before the establishment of Israel, a significant number of Arab Jews coexisted with Muslims and Christians in the region. It is primarily the European Jews and Jews from other countries outside the Middle East who would not have had a noticeable presence in the region, as they would have migrated to their alternative homeland in Madagascar. What other outcomes do you believe would have occurred if the Madagascar Plan had succeeded? Share your thoughts in the comments.